Hello there, Frogman, better known as Ryan, and disappointment can come in many different forms, from the unexpected to the obvious. As the years have gone on, one of the biggest sources of disappointment in gaming was that of the release of games in the Sonic franchise. During their 3D days, they have had some interesting missteps. Now ask yourself this, what is a fan base to do when the series that they love so much is constantly putting out stuff that is below average of what they had before? Well, a more constructive thing to do would be to make fan games based on the original material.
Thank you to Trinity for suggesting this game. Spark the Electric Jester is an independent game developed by Feepard Games, although most of the development seems to be attributed to Felipe Denoulet. Although most of the development seems to be attributed to, and I apologize for butchering this, Felipe Deneluz, who, it seems to me, solo developed the gameplay. A Kickstarter was launched for this game in the summer of 2015, to which it surpassed its goal by over $2,000. Now, I know we've all heard of stories of a Kickstarter campaign that overpromised on what they were going to deliver and ends up being a huge piece of shit. But this story doesn't quite follow that. The Kickstarter was used to fund the soundtrack of the game, as most of the gameplay was already done by Felipe when the campaign started.
Meaning the only disappointment we can have is the stuff that we were already promised.
But we're not going to get far if we stay on the outside looking in, so let's get into it. Spark is... What the f*** are you? Spark is an electrical engineer that just got his degree and is having trouble finding jobs.
I feel a little bit targeted.
After being replaced by a robot, Spark drops a line that hits a little too close to home. Already there's a sentence that says, sadly a degree doesn't mean you can get employed. Wish I had known that sooner. After getting replaced again in a performance job, Spark is down on his luck, but still very fashionable in his Jester hat, when all of a sudden the robot apocalypse happens, and naturally Spark goes in to stop those dastardly robots. We're heavily encouraged to do the tutorial to get familiar with Spark's movements, because we shouldn't go thinking we already know how to control him.
Sorry.
The tutorial is very hands-on and very nice, showing all of the very basic abilities we can do, such as dashing, wall jumping, and the combat maneuvers we can do. More on that later. With that done, we are thrust into the game proper, and I'll stop the clip at the first sign of a Sonic influence. Yeah, the speed of Spark can sometimes be a little frustrating to get a hold of, as Spark can't naturally get faster than his dash move. It's only when hitting downward slopes and other speed-generating structures that the speed can really pick up, and it feels incredible to drop onto a slope, hit the dash button, and speed off into the distance. The controls are very nice when doing Spark's basic movement, minus wall jumping, since I forgot most times that I had to just press A and let him do the work, as they had told me to do. But if running right and getting to the end is all that the game had, then things would be very boring, especially considering there's this weird lack of an ending fanfare that makes things a little remote and strangely eerie. Anyway, Spark is able to pick up certain items and things in the world to gain abilities that change his movement, properties, and combat strength. This stuff is so cool, and a move that feels more akin to Mega Man. These abilities change the way you interact with the world. Some abilities such as Wind are more suited to traversal, allowing for a double jump, dash in the air, and a charge shot that pushes you in the opposite direction of the shot. And pulling it off in the way that you want to is some of the most satisfying bits of gameplay I've ever done. In addition to changing the attacks of Spark, most abilities have a charge shot that can be shot in any direction, and attacking enemies fills the static meter. It builds for successful attacks, but depletes immediately upon getting hit, making it a great risk for reward type of mechanic, as building the meter allows you to use a unique charge shot, usually for devastating damage, and I'll take a moment to appreciate the slowdown that occurs when those shots land. Amazing. Pair this unique combat with the ability to dodge attacks by dashing at the right moment, and you've got a recipe for combat that feels very skillful while also being able to be enjoyed by anybody. I love being able to predict an attack and being able to dash, get invincibility, and continue attacking to build static meter. Almost everything in this game promotes momentum and an overall feeling of blazing through levels at your own pace, which makes it a little bit hard when the levels don't do that. Some of the levels go on for a very long time, focusing more on the very careful platforming, which has always been a dragging point in any Sonic game, and sometimes certain things aren't thought out pretty well. Sometimes the abilities help remedy this, other times they really don't, but it's not all bad. For every level that drags on for a while, you get good fights and insane movement options that makes you feel good. But on a different note, the story of this game is a bit all over the place. This might be a symptom of a single developer, but the dialogue misses more than it hits for me. Maybe it's the weird lack of awareness of what Spark is going through, or maybe the dialogue just wasn't a big focus. But regardless, you don't need good dialogue to realize that the last few stages of this game slap so hard I couldn't sit for a week. You're tasked with taking down the big boss, blowing up their fleets, and flying between them, and the epic scale of this was genuinely exciting. All of this building up to a fight with your robot copy and the big bad guy, each one of them being reasonably difficult and exhilarating from start to end, with a soundtrack that backs all of that up and adding so much more punch to it. And of course, there's the obligatory super power-up that comes in the final fight, and I appreciate that this fight is still a fight. It would be far too easy to make it a whole one-and-done thing, but I actually felt threatened from the fight, mostly due to my hubris and lack of care in taking damage, but it wrapped up everything so nicely, and with some animated segments that punctuated the scenes, this was an unexpected joy of a game.
Overall, Spark and the Electric Jester is a very solid experience. The combination of excellent movement and fighting mechanics makes for a great Sonic-esque experience with a little bit of Mega Man and Kirby abilities sprinkled into it. There are some levels that go a little bit long for my taste, paired with the fact that there's no ending fanfare and levels that don't have any clear transitions between them makes it seem like you're on for a really long ride. But when moments hit, they hit very well. There are even some things to do after the normal campaign where you can play as the fake version of Spark and some other modes that I didn't even get to touch upon. Which brings me to my next thing. I need to do more in life, so I commissioned somebody to build a robot of my exact likeness. It'll do everything that I do, and I'll be able to do a lot more in life, being able to venture off into other things. It says here that the robot isn't feeling motivated enough to build itself and will be delayed for a long time. It's perfect already!